The Royal Navy is here to provide a force for good worldwide.
Britain is an island nation and we need a navy in order to protect our shores and protect our interests abroad.
The Royal Navy and the Royal Marine's prime purpose is warfighting. That ability to bring force to bear underlies everything that we do.
A world-class warship is nothing without a fully effective and trained crew. Investment in their training is fundamental to warfighting success.
The individual training is great. The joy of being in the Royal Naval Service is being able to operate together as a team, in coherence with each other, playing to each other's strengths. And that team bonding is so vital and so valuable in a warfighting scenario.
The focus from our side is to provide warriors who can do war fighting and make sure they are ready for any situation they might find themselves on their operational deployment.
FOST has a huge scope for training personnel, be it the raw recruits from HMS Raleigh right up to the submarine commanding officers course, and I teach just 8 potential commanding officers per year, and if they pass they will almost certainly drive one of the Royal Naval's nuclear submarines.
FOST has a number of specialist training establishments around the UK. For example, up in Faslane we conduct submarine training, at Plymouth we train the larger surface ships, and in Portsmouth the bulk of the technical branches undertake their training.
We in FOST are involved in training both individuals in terms of professional or trade training, up to teams of people, and those teams can be an entire ship's company or indeed a group of ships, and we're involved in all levels of that training.
The Royal Navy starts training its people with what we call Phase 1 training, which is the first time an individual will undergo anything of militarisation. The purpose is to convert them from being a civilian into either a good rating at HMS Raleigh, a Royal Marine at the Commando Training Centre in Lympstone, or a naval officer at the Britannia Royal Naval College, Dartmouth. Britannia Royal Naval College has a good reputation throughout the world for the quality of its training. About 20% of the intake is made up from international young officers. The emphasis on initial officer training is really on the person to develop their own skills, styles and ways of doing things rather than learning by rote. The secondary part of training, what we call Phase 2 training, is there to extend into their professional skills and to develop the more technical side of whatever it is that they are going to be doing in the Royal Navy.
Green 30, sir.
Okay, point to me where its midships is.
There, sir.
Okay.
The training in Phase 2 is the best of classroom. We're kind of hands-on, which actually prepares the individual nicely for his first operational unit.
What makes FOST training really special is the way we start with basic serials, moving on to more complex scenarios as the training progresses.
The process of FOST builds a collection of individuals into a cohesive team and then turns them into a fighting unit.
We'll take a unit from scratch over an 8-week period. The first 3 to 4 weeks we'll lead the team by the hand and do pointed training to bring them up to a certain level. Lie down! You're dead! And then from there, the next 2 weeks we'll let them go a bit by themselves, and then the last 2 weeks we'll check to see if the training that we've given them is to the standard that is required for them to carry out the operational tasking that their fleet require them to do.
You cannot beat the realism of doing these exercises with real assets. And that's the advantage FOST have got over many navies. We've got assets such as submarines, aircraft and other surface ships, and there are very few other navies in the world that have got the sort of numbers, the sort of complex serials that we can provide in order to test the team fully.
We have battle damage scenarios that we go through, and we'll take pieces of equipment off and check that the teams can provide a capability to the command.
It's a two-way process. The staff engage with the ship's team, providing advice and guidance on how they can improve their performance so that their next time in their next serial we see it put into action and see that the war-fighting delivery done to a much higher standard. Training has got to be measurable, and therefore when a ship completes its operational sea training we have the final inspection, and at the final inspection the ship is tested against the absolute standard.
If you consider that the ops room is the heart of a warship, the heart is beating very well.
Submarine sea training is bespoke, and we offer tailored training packages for submarines in order to enable them to complete the tasks that they're ordered to do. The submarine simulators that the Navy use are unique, enabling us to provide training to teams and individuals that we wouldn't otherwise be able to provide at sea.
The shore-based training is one thing, and that makes sure that we have the basic principles correct. The sea trainers at sea is a dedicated team which will start off using the basics, making sure the submarine can remain safe in all situations. Once that has been proved, then the submarine will move on to the next stage of training, which will increase in tempo and pressure, and which will include all of the warfighting capabilities required of that submarine.
Royal Marines Commando training is world renowned as some of the best training for a military organisation. It's probably the most thorough and intense training that a soldier can undertake.
The Royal Marines are part of the Royal Naval Service, and the individual training is hugely important because that's the baseline for which you can then build on for the collective piece.
Every Royal Marine starts life as a civvy, entering the gates at Lympstone. After 32 weeks at Lympstone, he will leave and join his commando unit. He will then serve in a unit, gain experience, and then choose his specialisation, whether that be as a landing craftsman, driving boats, whether it be a sniper, a chef, etc. Having trained them to that high individual level, we then integrate them into a team, whether that be a commando unit or a warship. Here at Operation Sea Training, we then take that collective element, push them to their limits in scenario-based training, so that they're then prepared for any eventuality.
Teamwork is the main ethos for the Royal Navy. You have individual performances within the Navy, but you have to come together as a team to achieve the ultimate aim.
It's not just about training the individual, it's the way that individual fits into the team, and the way the team then fits into the unit, and the way that unit then fits into a multinational task group. Joint Warrior is a massive multinational exercise which covers all spheres of warfare in the maritime environment, as well as elements from the air and land.
We take the ships from up to 20 different nations and put them together into task groups, and we take them through a free play training period which can last up to 2 or 3 weeks, and during that time they use the skills they learnt as an individual unit to integrate into a much larger task group to ensure that they can fight together with multinational ships as part of a much wider force.
Without the Flag Officer Sea Training Organisation, every element of the Royal Navy would potentially be unable to conduct the task that it was called upon to do.
It is a wealth of experience, and the people that we have trained, or we are training, we have all done that job. We go to FOST because we have done that job particularly well, and the experience that we have gained throughout our years in the Navy, we can impart to those people, to bring those people on who are less experienced than ourselves.
FOST organisation must be a world beater at operational sea training, because otherwise the nations that send their ships here wouldn't do so. But in order to get the best, they send them to the best.
The ethos behind training at FOST is that we train as we mean to fight, and that's why we're good.